Why did Donald Trump choose this moment to tell the American people that he will become a dictator if elected? You might think it might be more politically shrewd to pretend to be a moderate and then do all this if he is elected. And I would give two reasons. The major reason is if Americans think that Donald Trump is inevitable and that fascism is the wave of the American future, people will begin in their minds to censor themselves, and they will make adjustments, and everything they do between now and 16 months from now at the time of the election, they might say, well, maybe I shouldn't say this because if Trump is reelected, he may start jailing people. He may retaliate against people. And very specifically, if Donald Trump right now wants to intimidate jurors in Fort Pierce, Florida, in Georgia, in Washington, D.C., in other trials, what better way than to give them the idea that if they are cast a vote that sends Donald Trump to prison or causes him to be convicted, then if Donald Trump becomes president, who's going to be first on the enemies list? Remember what President Obama said, when we lose true democracy, people get hurt. That's Absolutely. What's going to happen if this happens.
And I will note that as he is praising Judge Aileen Cannon, at least for now, before she maybe does something he doesn't like, he is threatening prosecutors, threatening them. And so far, no one's done anything about that.
This is a blanket threat. You're right.
Exactly. Michael Beschloss, Joshua Stanton, thank you both.
So Michael Popok, Legal AF, you heard longtime, well-known historian Michael Beschloss right there hitting the nail on the head. Donald Trump is crowing about getting back into power and the 47 agenda if he ever becomes the president of the United States again, which is going to be marked by just blowing through all the anti-autocratic guardrails around our democracy and creating a unitary executive branch presidency that is akin to a dictatorship or fascism. And he is banking on the fact that the people, under the guise of making America great again and America first, which is right out of a Nazi sloganeering, are going to side with him and want to come under his thumb rather than vote for, Joe Biden. That's what he's banking on, that people want to be controlled, even American people, even people who yearn to breathe free, want to come under a fascist dictator's thumb. And he wants to be that fascist dictator. And then he's got an enemies list that he's going to go after for anyone that stood in his way. And he's taken names, people that, prosecutors that prosecuted him, jurors, grand jurors, special grand jurors, regular jurors who indicted or convicted him. These are the people that are going to have to worry in the back of their mind. If I vote for this indictment, if I vote for this conviction, am I going to have tomorrow a knock on my door or my family's door by the FBI, the IRS, the Department of Justice? What's going to happen? Am I going to be jailed? The fact that I'm even talking about this in America, in the United States of America, in our constitutional republic is beyond parallel. There is no parallel. There is no precedent for this. But there's a reason that the historians of the world are getting on television and talking about what they're observing and what could happen and the parallels in history. Because why wouldn't a human being who's just doing their civic duty worry in the back of their mind, of course, that if Donald Trump somehow won the presidency, of which he has little chance, except he'll be the other person. It'll be Joe Biden and that nominee. So there's always a chance. We didn't think he'd beat Hillary Clinton, but somehow that happened. But, let's assume for now that he can't win. But if he does win, he's going to pardon everybody, including himself, at least for the federal crimes. That's why the state cases have to stick. Georgia, Fulton County, Fani Willis. One of the reasons I'm sure that Jack Smith is sort of staying out of Fani Willis's way in Georgia, because he wants an indictment to stick and not be subject to a pardon. Same thing in New York with Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA. So we have that going on, but we also have to worry about, what would happen if all of these bad people got back into power, all the election deniers got back into and handled the levers of power in our government. Jeffrey Clark as the Attorney General. It's not fiction. It would happen if Donald Trump got in. And there's no bigger election denier and usurper of our democracy than Jeffrey Clark, right? Who wanted to take over as the acting Attorney General within the last 2 weeks of the administration for Trump in order to declare martial law, suspend the Constitution, seize voting machines, and reinstall Donald Trump as the president. That's Jeffrey Clark, right? Ken Cuccinelli, who was the acting deputy, whatever, of Homeland Security. Picture him as the Secretary of State, another election denier. Picture Sidney Powell, that crackpot, being put in any position at all in the government. And that's what Donald Trump would do. And that's what voters and ultimately jurors, and that's Michael Beschloss's point, jurors have to worry about that. And it only takes one juror to worry about that for there to be a hung jury or they can't get a conviction. You need unanimity in a jury in a criminal case. Now, I'm not that worried about certain places. You know, the Manhattan case against Donald Trump, he's going to lose that case. I mean, the Manhattan jury I have a lot of confidence in. They're not worried about like the IRS knocking at their front door, and they're going to vote with their conscience and based on the evidence and the facts. DC, I believe the same thing. Florida, you know, some of the people down there in Fort Pierce, sort of a very red set of counties that make up the Southern District of Florida and the Fort Pierce area. And I could see one or more people not only pro-Trump, but also worried about if I don't go along, what will happen if Donald Trump gets back into power? How will he retaliate against me personally? And that is the point of Michael Beschloss's wake-up call. You know, historians are the canary in the coal mine, right? They tell us when there's a gas leak, because they're going to sense it first as parallels throughout history, because history is prologue. And that's what we're hearing. They should not be ignored. There's a reason that society has historians and has had it ever since, you know, a time immemorial. And we have to listen, and this is a wake-up call for it. There is, if you need to explain, as Michael just did, why is Donald Trump so confident and cocky talking about his fascist ideals, right? You've got people going on network television saying, yeah, Donald Trump, you know, I used to work for Donald Trump. He not only admired dictators, he admired dictators' ability to kill people without repercussion like journalists and others. That is who Republicans are considering being their nominee for the highest job in the land and leader of the free world. But I'm only taking it on this hot take from the perspective of a prospective juror worrying about a crazed, megalomaniacal, narcissistic, fascist dictator, Donald Trump, 47, becoming our president and what he could do as a result. So how do we stop it? Some people might be saying. One, you got to vote for the other person. Whether you like the other person or not, or you love the other person, or you just stomach them and tolerate them and hold your nose, if you're in favor of democracy and not in favor of fascism and dictatorship and letting everything that was built by the founding fathers fall to ruins and in shreds at our feet, then vote for the other guy and not Donald Trump. That's one. Secondly, getting Donald Trump convicted of something that would disqualify him, and there's only one way to disqualify him under a quirk of our Constitution, because the founding fathers were very good in that regard in terms of creating an elastic constitution and a form of government that would last this long, but they didn't anticipate a Donald Trump. And so they didn't have other disqualifying language in the definition of who can be president. If you are an insurrectionist and you're convicted as such, that's going to be a pretty good way to have you disqualified, unless you're pardoned. So we have to get him disqualified by way of a count in Jack Smith's set of indictments, and then hope that he doesn't get elected again. In the state areas, we don't have to worry as much. Georgia, for pardons, some people might say, well, Georgia governors are Republican. Can't they just pardon the guy? Well, they can't, because Georgia had a lot of corrupt governors in the past. And so they took away the power of the governor to just unilaterally wave a wand and absolve somebody of their crimes. So anybody that wants to get a pardon has to serve 5 years in prison first. Then they can apply to a state board, and then the state board is split between Democrats and Republicans. So not that easy in Georgia. Governorship in New York is almost always in Democratic hands, and the governor does make decisions about pardons. So we have to have a coordinated effort of the state prosecutors district attorneys, attorney generals using their criminal powers to go after Donald Trump, to pin him down in areas where he can't be pardoned, while Jack Smith not only indicts him for the things like Espionage Act and obstruction of official proceeding and corruption and conspiracy, but gets him on a count that can disqualify him as an insurrectionist. Then we got to make sure that he doesn't get reelected. That is it. It's not that hard. We don't have to bang our heads like this is so hard I can't figure it out. I just sorted it out for you. Those are the things that have to happen in due course over the next 16 months. I'm going to follow it just like I did here on this hot take, only on the MeidasTouch network. It's the only place you can get my hot takes. If you go over to the YouTube channel for MeidasTouch, you can free subscribe. You can slide over to playlists. You can go down a couple of notches. You'll see Michael Popok, and all of my content is listed there. Then every Wednesday and Saturday, we do a live podcast, which we put on audio on your audio platforms like Google and Spotify and Apple and all that. And we call that long form podcast At the Intersection of Law and Politics, Legal AF. I co-founded and co-anchored it. You can watch us on Wednesdays and Saturdays. You can follow me on all things social media at MS Popok. You like this content? Give me a thumbs up, write a comment. I'll open a dialogue with you and we'll take it from there. Follow me, Michael Popok, only here on the MeidasTouch Network.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.